Welcome to another edition of Influence Today with Chet Tart and Terry Lyles. Glad you can join us. Hi, Terry. How you doing?
Great. Thank you, Chet. Good to be here again.
I think the topic that is still on people's minds is the hurricane that blew through Southwest Florida. Maybe I think it was about 2 weeks ago.
Correct.
I think we need to talk a couple things. For everyone who's listening, how do you deal with something like that? I know you have some tools to deal with that stuff, but at the same time, it's been 2 or 3 weeks. How do you deal with the 2 or 3 weeks afterwards? I do know when I'm in a hurricane here, it's kind of scary. I mean, you
Yes.
don't know when it's going to end. You don't know if the rain is going to continue and the
Right.
wind is the problem. But I understand over there was the water. So they must have contacted you already, and
Yes.
you must have given some advice, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's great to be with you again today, Chet. And obviously, with hurricane situations, you and I both live in South Florida. This one happened to go around us and went to the Gulf and came on shore. We've had our share of hurricanes that hit us directly. So we know I've lived here for 20 years. You have, we know what hurricanes can be, good, bad, and ugly. The challenge with what happened over there was because where it hit, it decimated coastlines. So it was one of the largest hurricanes that ever hit this part of the United States on record. And as a result of that, coastlines have been changed. Sanibel Island, which is an island off the Fort Myers southern coast of Naples, is gone. They're having to rebuild it. I mean, so unless you have a ferry, a plane, or a boat, but you probably don't because everything on the island was gone. And, I know people that live on the island over there and they evacuated, fortunately, because without evacuation, you would not be talking today. So a lot of those people didn't survive. And, the death count continues to rise. It's well over 100 now, and it's going to continue to rise because I saw this in the tsunami, of Thailand in 2004, where 2, 3, 4 weeks later, they're finding hundreds of bodies because as the water recedes, you find people. As you clear debris, you find more people. So this is going to be an ongoing cleanup for a long time.
Well, let's talk about what goes through your mind. Let's say there's two mindsets I'm looking at. One is I'm going to write it out.
Right.
And then I make a mistake by writing it out and I'm caught. When I thought about it, the bridge is out, the electricity's out, the water is out, your neighbors are gone, you're stranded.
Right.
Or the other mindset is I'm leaving, and hopefully when I come back, there's something there. I come back, it's destroyed. Everything, and you have the clothes on your back, and that's about it. So tell me about the mindset. You deal with a lot of people's minds. You deal with athletes. You deal with race car dealers, race car drivers. What is it that we can feel comfort with or control, knowing we left or stayed? Is there any kind of switches in the mind that we could be prepared for future events like this?
Yeah, it's the adage of preparation. I got this through the military training protocol: is prepare for the worst and expect the best. So if a hurricane could hit you head on and it's a Cat 5, 157 miles an hour plus, there's probably not going to be a lot left if it does hit you. And you don't always know where it goes because hurricanes have a mind of their own. This was supposed to hit Tampa, St. Pete, turn south and hit south of Fort Myers. So if you're on that coastline, you have to prepare for the worst. And your best just to get out. I mean, because you can lose things, losing yourself or your family, or as a result of trying to hang on to your things doesn't work really well. So I think we've all learned in South Florida that if you're going to get a direct hit from a Hurricane 5, a Cat 5, you need to get out and try to go back and recoup, because a lot of people lost their lives by trying to stay there. And we saw this in Katrina years ago. And it wasn't the hurricane, it was the break in the levees. It's the same way here. It was a break in levees in Katrina where flooding took place and people were in their roofs trying to get picked off by helicopters to go to safety. So water damage is a lot worse than even the wind damage. The wind damage can blow things away, but the flooding is really hard because there's debris, and the flooding is really hard to swim through all the debris.
Well, let's go back to the question asked. It seems that you answered it a little bit, but if that's going to happen, you should be prepared. And preparation comes with a checklist. So if just think about, I guess you should think about, I'm coming back to nothing.
Right.
So what do you want to take with you? Pile the car up with your important papers, maybe your passport,
Right.
maybe food and water if you need it. Take the clothes you want, maybe a laptop. I mean, is that something that should go through your mind, a checklist like that? So that also mentally prepares you for the fact that you're coming back to nothing.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I both have what we call 30-second bags, and it's a briefcase that everything stays in there. She has a briefcase that everything stays in it, and it's in my office and her office. All of our important papers, passports, everything that we need, birth certificates, travel documents, everything is there. That if something does happen, I can grab one bag and I'm out the door. Because if it's more than that bag, you're probably going to end up losing your life over something that really doesn't matter. Like you said, if you've got with a hurricane, you have some notice. You may have a few days. We still have a 30-second bag, as I call it. I can grab that one bag beside my desk right here, and I'm out. I got everything I need. Everything else I would miss, but I have everything I need in one bag.
So let's talk about the mindset.
Yeah.
We're prepared for that, and we pack it up and we leave. We come back, things are gone.
Yes.
And I gotta believe, I mean, people forgot because I don't see it on the news anymore. Sure. Everyone was rushing to help people with food and stuff like that. I don't know if that's happening. What do you do now? How do you prepare for the rest of your life with nothing? You don't even have a job. I mean, let's say you owned a business, it's gone. Right. Let's say you went to work, it's gone. Is there a preparation for that? I mean, mentally, I don't mean a checklist, but mentally preparation, knowing that I'm at ground zero.
Sure. Well, and again, you mentioned ground zero. We saw this at 9/11. I've seen this in Thailand after the tsunami and Haiti after the earthquake and all the hurricanes over the past 20 years working here in Florida. And, it's kind of like losing. Look, we grieve anything we lose. So anything we lose, there's a grief process. It's the tragedy of letting go.
That we have to go through that.
And
right?
You have to go through it. You can't just act like it didn't happen. You can't go back to your home and say, I used to live there, it's gone, and I'm cool with that. It doesn't work. You come back home and your child is missing, or your parent is dead, or you lost your life and other people have to grieve you. We grieve anything we lose. So you can only prepare so much, and then you navigate the rest. So what's happening now after week 2, week 3, week 4 is the navigation of what do I do now to pick up the pieces and identify what I can do, rebuild, and move forward. So the preparation part is pre-disaster, and then there's the disaster and the cleanup, and then there's the recovery stage. So I work more on the recovery stage. So my actionation now is just really getting started. It's activating. What do you do now? Okay, you lost your home, your cars, your boats, and a lot of these people weren't even insured because to pay the insurance on the waterfront homes over there and the boats were more than they were worth. So people just go, hey, let's take our chance. Hasn't happened in 15 years, 20 years. So people that went back there, do you see all the video of the boats piled up in piles and the houses? They lost everything. And most of those people that have those resources can rebuild. But, at some point, it's still a loss. That loss is what we have to navigate. And that's what I write about and share with people is how do you prepare for a loss? A loss doesn't take place. That's great. If a loss does take place, how do you navigate through that to recover from it and move on with a new life?
So what are some of the steps to navigate?
Well, you have to realize that anything that's lost, you can't get back, and that's the rebuilding stage. mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. I mean, you can only prepare so much. I mean, you and I have talked. I just lost my
Right.
son a couple of months
Right.
ago, and
Right.
I've been planning for that for 3 decades, literally, because he should have passed 3 decades ago and he didn't. So when it does happen, you're prepared. I know what to do, but that doesn't mean it feels right. You still have to work through the emotions. You still have to work through the details and the body count and the insurance programs and all the things that still have to be done. That's why life planning involves like making sure your will, living trust, and all those things, insurance policies are in place, that when something does happen tragically, you don't have to try to figure out what to do. You've already put a plan in place. So planning is the best, because it helped me so much that we already had a plan in place. It was still hard to activate, but when the plan was activated, we already knew what to do because we thought about it and planned it outside the emotion. So the people now that are rebuilding there have to work through that emotional recovery and physical recovery of, do we even stay here? I mean, the landscape changed over there, which is what happened in the tsunami. I mean, the coastline 3 miles in for about 1,400 miles from north to south changed. And fishing villages are gone forever. They built condos and hotels on them because it cleaned the beaches off. So sometimes you don't go back to where it happened. You just have to rebuild someplace else.
So it sounds to me that you probably can't do this alone. You really do need a
Yeah.
hand, somebody to help you through this. And you can't help everybody yourself.
No.
Who should I reach out to? I mean, what is the next protocol so that I'm able to handle this? Because it sounds like some people can't even handle, my car's out of gas.
I know, right. Yeah, and there's a lot of great organizations. There's local churches that are doing a lot. The Red Cross, the government works to help. Local communities pitching in, helping out. I mean, even though the hurricane didn't hit our side of the coast, we're on the East Coast, we had a tornado that ripped through our neighborhood and destroyed multiple properties here in a swath of about 2 miles. One tornado. Okay. I mean, tore roofs off, tore tennis courts down, light poles, trees in the road. And that took place in about 30 to 45 seconds. So you just rebuild. And, I have on my website a manual that I've used for years for this. It's called Caught in Nature's Path. It's when this kind of natural tragedy happens. What do you do? There's a way to do it mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. So you can get that at terrylyles.com. It's a free PDF download. It's not even for sale. We're already shipping those, have been shipping those to the West Coast of Florida. So they're out there so you can get them to your friends, your family. And that's part of what this podcast is about, that terrylyles.com, TERRYLYLES.com. It's called Caught in Nature's Path. You can download that PDF and ship it electronically to anyone, print it off, hand it out. We have physical copies here through my publisher that's been gracious enough to do this with me. But there's a lot of tips. There's 35 pages of information there. So there's a lot to go through and unpack with this. It's just knowing that there's hope after tragedy. As long as you're alive, you can find a way to rebuild and restructure your life.
Well, that's great that you wrote that. How did you get the idea to write that?
Years ago, I kept doing this, what you and I are doing right now on newscasts, Fox, CNN, weather channels, local media across the country, hurricane, tsunami. I'd say the same thing over and over and over again. And I'm like, why don't we just put it down in print? I mean, it's like, I'm saying the same thing again and again and again. Why can't we just get it where people can download it and they don't have to contact me or necessarily even pay me to tell them what I know? I'm just going to give it away for free. So that's what we did. We did one for Caught in Nature's Path, Caught in the Crossfire, which is for school shootings, terrorist events, bombings. All those are free PDF downloads on my website. So, that's the philanthropic side of what I try to do. Instead of just saying the same thing over and over again, we tried to create products and resources where people can download them for free and go out and utilize them to help their communities.
It's each one of these products different, or is it all the same? Caught in nature's path and
Caught in the
choosing
crossfire.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very similar because recovery is recovery. They're just positioned a little differently. So some of the information changes because one could be a little more horrific than the other, but at the end of the day, it's still recovery, and it's whether you hate to be as graphic as this, but whether your child was at, a high school where a shooter went in and killed your child, or you lost your child or parent or spouse in a hurricane, you still lost. How do you handle that? How do you get your mind and body around that to not just survive it, but to learn to thrive again? So a lot of the information is similar. It's just the precepts on the beginning of it changes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you giving that as a community um, uh, freebie so that
Sure.
people can survive from that. Have you talked to any of, let's say Thailand, that you were there, you talked to people. What was their mindset like when you did talk to them?
It's still the shock phase that's now wearing off. It usually takes a week or so. So the first beginnings of grief, shock is the first one. And then you end up, the shock begins to wear off, and then you end up in this state of, I can't believe this happened. So it's almost like a catharsis, a grieving process that you realize what you've lost. And then you go through a depression phase that, now what do I do?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you end up in a guilt phase. I should have planned better. I should have left. I shouldn't have stayed. And then somewhere after there, you get into a back to reality phase. So there's 5 to 6 phases of grief, depending on who you read after. I keep it pretty simple. So they're just now moving into the depression and the reality phase of, wow, the shock is worn off now. This is where we are. Now we have to figure out, what do we do? Do we stay? Do we leave? Do we rebuild? Do we invest someplace else? So this process is a matriculation of shock, depression, the anger part that goes along after the depression,
Yeah.
and then the settling, I should have known better, and then the recovery state. So they got a few steps to go still. That's why what I do now is just coming involved after a couple, 3 weeks of this, because I've done first responder work, but it's really not my expertise. I mean, I've dug bodies out of holes in countries, but mine is really after the dust settles, so to speak, and the water recedes, that you go in and deal with the emotional carnage, and that's where they are now.
So what I'm hearing that's critically important, that if this hasn't hit you, any kind of nature hasn't hit you, prepare now. Preparation will help you. Everything we talk about in leadership, everything we talk about in public speaking, it talks about preparation, takes away the fear, and it also, you just feel more comfortable when you're prepared. So I'm going to take away the biggest message is, if you think this is not going to happen to you, you're crazy, because I'm seeing it more and more, closer and closer. And I've known people who have been involved in this
Sure.
kind of tragedy. And I have a close friend who was in Cape Coral.
Yeah.
And the house is standing, but the area is destroyed and power is still not back. So prepare yourself. And I guess it's prepare yourself with money, because you're gonna have to stay at a hotel.
Yes, absolutely.
Prepare yourself with friends. You may have to stay there, and prepare yourself to leave at a reasonable time, even though you think there's 2 things that there's a couple things I've lived in. I lived in earthquakes. You can't prepare for that because you never know when it's coming.
It just happens. Yeah.
Tornadoes, you have a little preparation, but you don't know which way it's going.
Right.
Hurricane seems to be the most you could prepare for, because
Correct.
you track it for days before it shows up. And is there any other, I think that tsunami, can
Yeah.
you prepare for that?
No. Look, I live prepared. You can't prepare for an earthquake. You can't prepare for tsunami, because the tsunami that took place in 2004 literally took place within 4 minutes, 5 minutes. earthquake happened on the ocean. And within 4 to 5 minutes, it hit the ground. No one knew what happened. It just looked like a big wave coming. Wow, it's a great surf. 3 miles in, it wiped everything out. So if you're in that situation, there's not a lot you can do. But at my house right now, I have over 100 gallons of water. I have food for 12 months. Okay. I have batteries. I have flashlights. I have candles. I have torches, all ready. If my house is wiped out, didn't matter. But if I just go without power for 2 weeks, we eat good. We're living. I don't need anything. I've got fuel, water, food, and sustenance that I can go for 6 to 12 months. That's living prepared.
So the message we're getting across here is prepare for all this.
Absolutely. And if your house is wiped out, then whatever, it is what it is. Didn't matter. I was probably gone with it. But if it's an inconvenience, if the power goes out for 2 weeks, which in Florida we've had that happen, where power grids are wiped out, we both lived in those situations. What do? You have a generator? Do you have fuel for the generator? Do you have water, food, and lighting that you can prepare for? Is it uncomfortable going without AC? Of course. Will you die? No. That's why I like Florida versus up north, like in Detroit or Alaska, where I used to live, because if it happens in the winter, you freeze to death. In summer, it's just uncomfortable. You're just hot. But my family can eat, drink, cook, and fuel for 7 to 12 months. Prepare. It doesn't take that much to do. Just prepare. Every time you go to the store, buy 2 extra gallons of water and put it in your house. That's it. It's just be prepared. Most people are caught off guard because they're not prepared. Prepared people are rarely, if ever, surprised because they prepared and they're ready and therefore not surprised.
Thank you, Terry. We'll end with that because that is so powerful. Preparation for everything is key.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And if you want to get that free pamphlet, it's terrylyles.com, correct?
terrylyles.com, TERRYLYLES.com. As caught in this case is Caught in Nature's Path, but there's Caught in the Crossfire as well that's there. So if there's a school shooting, something that's happened, a terrorist attack, a tragedy that's happened in your neighborhood, it's all free PDF download. So visit there, terrylyles.com. Those resources are there for people who are listening.
Thank you, Terry. And thank you for listening to Influence Today.
Thank you.